It was just an ordinary afternoon when a little girl walked into the store carrying only one coin. Even though she was humiliated by the clerk, she insisted on buying the pink dress of her dreams. The millionaire owner listened to everything in silence before making a decision that changed his day. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as 10-year-old Emma Carter paused in front of Bellamy's, the most exclusive children's boutique in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Her reflection in the polished glass was a stark contrast to the opulence within, tangled brown hair framing a small face smudged with the grime of New York streets. Clothes that had once belonged to someone else now faded and too short for her growing frame. But Emma didn't see herself in that reflection. Instead, her eyes were fixed on a single item displayed prominently in the window, a rose-pink dress with delicate lace trim and a satin ribbon sash. For weeks now, this had been her ritual. Every day after school, she would take the long route home, crossing from her neighborhood in East Harlem into this world of privilege, just to stand and look at the dress. In her mind, she had worn it 1,000 times, twirling in front of her classmates, sitting tall at her desk, walking through the school hallways with her head held high instead of ducked down in shame. One day, she whispered to herself, pressing a small hand against the cold glass. One day. A woman exited the store, designer shopping bags dangling from her wrists, and gave Emma a disapproving glance. The girl stepped back, knowing she didn't belong here, but unable to tear herself away. The security guard inside had noticed her too, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. It was time to go. With one last longing look at the pink dress, Emma turned and began the long walk back to her apartment, her shoulders squared against the growing chill of early autumn. The building where Emma lived with her mother, Sarah, stood in stark contrast to the gleaming townhouses of the Upper East Side. Paint peeled from the walls of their one-bedroom apartment, and the radiator clanked and wheezed through the night. But Sarah Carter had done everything possible to make it a home. Thrift store curtains hung cheerfully at the windows, and small potted plants lined the fire escape outside. "Mom, I'm home," Emma called out, dropping her backpack by the door. Sarah appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Despite working 2 jobs, morning shifts at a diner and evening cleaning at an office building, she always managed to be home when Emma returned from school. "How was school today, sweetheart?" she asked, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. "It was okay," Emma replied, the lie coming easily. She didn't tell her mother about the girls who had laughed at her patched jeans or how she'd eaten lunch alone again. "Ms. Winters said my essay was the best in class." Sarah's tired face brightened. "That's wonderful, Em. I always said you got your father's way with words." Emma smiled, though mentions of her father always brought a hollow feeling to her chest. He had left 3 years ago, promising to return once he found steady work in Chicago. His calls had grown less frequent, until they stopped altogether. Emma had stopped waiting for them, but Sarah still checked the phone bill every month looking for his number. "Homework first, then we'll have dinner," Sarah said, returning to the kitchen where a pot of soup simmered on the stove, stretched, with extra water to last through the week. Emma settled at the small table they shared for meals and homework, but her mind wasn't on fractions or spelling. It was back on Fifth Avenue, glimmering behind glass. "Mom," she asked, pencil hovering over her math worksheet, "do you think I could have something new to wear for school? My jeans are getting too small." Sarah's hands paused mid-stir. "Christmas isn't too far away, Em. We can see what we can do then." The unspoken truth hung between them. Even Christmas gifts would come from donation bins or thrift stores, carefully cleaned and wrapped to look new. Emma nodded, accepting the answer she'd expected. "It's okay. I was just wondering." Later, that night, after Sarah had left for her evening job, Emma stood before the cracked mirror on their bathroom door. She pulled her hair back, straightened her shoulders, and tried to imagine herself transformed. Not just by any dress, but by that dress, the one that seemed to shimmer even under the harsh boutique lights. In her imagination, she wasn't just a girl in a pretty dress. She was someone who belonged, someone who wasn't invisible or mocked. Someone who mattered. Across town in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Ryan Mitchell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, a glass of bourbon in hand. At 43, he'd built Mitchell Enterprises from nothing into one of the most successful retail groups in the country. Today's acquisition of Bellamy's, the final jewel in his crown of luxury children's boutiques, should have felt like triumph. Instead, he felt nothing but the familiar emptiness. "The board is impressed with the quarterly numbers," said a voice behind him. Diane Reynolds, his executive assistant, placed a stack of reports on his desk. "Bellamy's is already showing strong performance under our management." "Good," Ryan said, not turning from the window. "Schedule a walkthrough for next week. I want to see the flagship store for myself." "You never visit the stores," Diane remarked, surprise evident in her voice. Ryan finally turned, his expression unreadable. Things change. After Diane left, Ryan returned to the window, watching darkness settle over the city. His reflection stared back at him, perfectly tailored suit, expertly cut hair, every detail projecting success and confidence. The costume of a man who had everything. Few people knew the truth about Ryan Mitchell, that he'd grown up in a trailer park in rural Pennsylvania, that he'd worn the same 3 shirts throughout high school, rotating them carefully so no one would notice. That he'd worked his way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, sleeping in his car when he couldn't afford rent. He'd buried that past so deeply that sometimes even he could forget it existed. But lately, something had been stirring in him. Memories he'd suppressed, questions about what all this success was really for. The bourbon burned down his throat as his eyes traveled over the city lights. Somewhere out there were children like he had been, hungry for more than just food, ashamed of their circumstances, dreaming of something better. His fingers tightened around the glass. He'd climbed out of that life, reinvented himself, buried, the scared poor boy under layers of achievement and wealth. Ryan Mitchell was a success story, an American dream realized. So why did he feel so hollow? He set down his drink and picked up his phone, scrolling through the portfolio of his recent acquisition. Bellamy's was known for its handcrafted designs and exorbitant prices, outfitting the children of celebrities, politicians, and old money families. He'd bought it because it was profitable, because it strengthened his market position, because it made business sense. A notification interrupted his browsing, his calendar reminder for tomorrow's early meeting. Ryan set the phone down and prepared for another night of restless sleep in his empty penthouse, unaware that his path was about to cross with a small girl with tangled hair and determined eyes, and that their encounter would crack open the carefully constructed walls around his past. In her own bed across town, Emma lay awake too, watching shadows from passing cars dance across her ceiling. Her hand curled around something small and cool, a single quarter she'd found on the sidewalk that afternoon. It wasn't much, not even close to what she needed, but it was a start. "One day," she whispered again to the darkness, the quarter clutched tightly in her palm. One day. The quarter Emma had found became the start of something. Over the next few weeks, she began hunting for coins everywhere, checking payphone slots, scanning gutters, even crawling under vending machines. Each discovery, no matter how small, felt like a victory. A penny from beneath a park bench, a dime gleaming in a puddle, a nickel forgotten in the laundromat's change return. She kept her growing collection in an old mint tin hidden beneath her mattress, counting it each night before bed. The ritual became her secret comfort, a concrete measure of progress towards something that felt impossibly distant. "What you looking for?" asked Darius, a classmate who had noticed Emma examining the ground near the school playground. Emma hesitated, unused to being spoken to by her peers. "Just stuff." "What kind of stuff?" he persisted, crouching down beside her. After a moment's consideration, Emma decided to trust him. Money, coins people drop. Darius's eyes widened with interest. "What for? You saving up for something?" Emma nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "A dress." "Must be some dress," Darius remarked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 quarters. Here, I was going to buy chips, but I'm not hungry anyway. Emma stared at the offered coins, pride warring with desire. I can't take your money. It's not like that, Darius said, pushing the quarters toward her. My mum says if you help someone reach their dream, you get good luck. I could use some good luck for the math test tomorrow. With those words, Emma's resistance crumbled. She accepted the quarters, warmth spreading through her chest at this unexpected kindness. Thanks, Darius. I hope you ace your test. That afternoon, instead of just pausing at Bellamy's window, Emma pressed her face against the glass, trying to glimpse the price tag on the pink dress. A saleswoman, inside, noticed and frowned, making a shooing motion with her hand. Emma backed away, cheeks burning with embarrassment, but her determination remained unshaken. The next day at school, she approached Ms. Winters after class. Excuse me, she said quietly. Do you know how much fancy dresses cost, like really fancy ones? Miss Winters looked up from her grading with surprise. That depends on where you buy them, Emma. Is this for a report? Sort of, Emma replied, shifting from foot to foot. There's this dress at Bellamy's on Fifth Avenue. Understanding dawned on Miss Winters' face. Oh, Emma, Bellamy's is very expensive. Their dresses can cost hundreds of dollars. Emma's heart sank, but she forced herself to nod calmly. Thank you for telling me. That night, she counted her collection again. After weeks of searching and with Darius's contribution, she had $275. It was nowhere near enough, but something in Emma refused to let go of the dream. Her mother had always told her that faith and persistence could move mountains. Maybe they could also buy dresses. Across town, Ryan Mitchell was reviewing the final details for his visit to Bellamy's the next day. Unlike his usual acquisitions, where he remained deliberately detached, he found himself oddly invested in this store. Something about it had hooked into a part of him he thought long buried, perhaps the memory of pressing his own face against shop windows as a child, wanting what he could never have. The store manager will meet you at 9, Diane informed him, sliding a folder across his desk. Beverly Harlow. She's been with Bellamy's for 15 years and knows every aspect of the business. Ryan nodded, scanning the briefing document. And the designer, Amelia Collins? She'll join you at 10. She's quite eager to present her new collection. Diane hesitated. It's unusual for you to take such a hands-on approach with a new acquisition. Ryan closed the folder. I told you things change. After Diane left, Ryan opened his laptop and pulled up photos of Bellamy's merchandise. The clothes were beautiful, artfully crafted, and priced at a level that made them accessible to only the wealthiest families. A small voice in the back of his mind whispered that he had become the very thing he had once resented, the gatekeeper of luxury, deciding who belonged and who didn't. He pushed the thought away. This was business, not personal. The pricing reflected quality and exclusivity. It was simply how the market worked. Still, as he prepared for bed that night, he found himself remembering a Christmas when he was 9, how his mother had sewn patches on the inside of his coat so the other kids wouldn't see the holes, how he'd pretended to be unbothered when classmates showed off their new clothes and toys. The memory was so vivid it almost winded him. Why now? Why was his carefully compartmentalized past suddenly bleeding into his present? The next morning, Emma woke with a decision firmly lodged in her mind. Today would be the day. She would take her $275 to Bellamy's and at least ask about the dress. The worst they could say was no, and she was used to hearing that word. She dressed with extra care, washing her face twice and attempting to smooth her unruly hair. From her drawer, she extracted her least worn shirt, a white one with only a small stain near the hem that could be hidden if she tucked it in just right. You look nice today, Sarah commented, as Emma entered the kitchen. Special occasion at school? Just want to look good, Emma replied evasively, accepting the bowl of oatmeal her mother placed before her. Sarah studied her daughter for a moment. Everything okay, Em? You've been quieter than usual lately. Emma nodded quickly. Everything's fine, just thinking about stuff. After breakfast, Emma hugged her mother goodbye with extra fierceness, then set off for school. But instead of turning left toward PS 183, she turned right toward Fifth Avenue. Her heart hammered in her chest as she contemplated what she was about to do. She had never skipped school before, had never even been late, but something about today felt important, like a crossroads. She moved through the morning crowds, invisible among the hurrying adults. The city felt different. In these early hours, less intimidating, more full of possibility. By the time she reached Bellamy's, the sun had risen fully, bathing the window displays in golden light. For several minutes, Emma just stood there, gathering her courage. The pink dress seemed to glow, beckoning to her. With trembling fingers, she reached into her pocket and touched her collection of coins, now wrapped in a handkerchief. She had emptied her mint tin that morning, transferring every penny, nickel, dime, and quarter into this small bundle. It represented weeks of searching, hoping, dreaming. Taking a deep breath, Emma pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into Bellamy's. The interior was even more intimidating than she had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, plush cream carpets cushioned her worn sneakers, and soft classical music played from hidden speakers. The air smelled of something expensive, like flowers and clean things. A few well-dressed women browsed the displays, none sparing Emma a glance. She moved carefully through the store, making herself as small and unobtrusive as possible, until she reached the display where the pink dress hung. Up close, it was even more beautiful, the fabric so light it seemed to float, the stitching so fine it was nearly invisible. Emma reached out one finger to touch it, then quickly pulled back, afraid of leaving a smudge. "Can I help you?" The voice was cool and clipped. Emma turned to find a tall woman with perfectly styled blonde hair looking down at her with obvious disapproval. Her name tag read, Beverly Harlow, Manager. Emma's voice faltered, then strengthened. "I want to know about this dress, please." Beverly's eyebrows rose. "This is the Rose Garden party dress from our spring collection. It's $395. The number hit Emma like a physical blow. $395. Even if she found a coin every day for years, she would never reach that amount. But she had come too far to retreat now. Slowly, with dignity that belied her years, Emma reached into her pocket and withdrew her handkerchief bundle. She unwrapped it carefully on a nearby glass counter, revealing the small pile of coins, her entire fortune. "This is what I have," she said simply, looking up at Beverly with clear eyes. "I know it's not enough, but I've been saving. I really love that dress." Beverly's face hardened, and she glanced around nervously as if afraid other customers might notice this interaction. "Young lady, this is not a place for jokes. That amount wouldn't even buy a hair ribbon here. Where are your parents?" Emma stood her ground. "I'm not joking. I know it's not enough yet, but I thought maybe you could hold the dress until I save more." Beverly's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "This is an exclusive boutique, not a layaway shop. I think you should leave before I call security." Emma felt heat rising to her face but refused to cry. Her father had always told her that when you want something badly enough, you have to be brave enough to ask for it, even when the answer might be no. "I understand," she said quietly, beginning to gather her coins. "Thank you for your time." It was at this precise moment that the front door opened, and Ryan Mitchell walked in, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his attention focused on the tablet in his hands. Ryan Mitchell entered Bellamy's with the confident stride of a man who owned not just the building but the very air within it. His eyes remained on his tablet, reviewing final sales figures, until an uncomfortable silence drew his attention. He looked up to find Beverly Harlow standing rigidly beside a display, her face a mask of professional discomfort. Across from her stood a small girl, her hands carefully gathering coins from the glass countertop. Something about the scene stopped him mid-step. The girl's shoulders were squared, her chin raised slightly, despite the obvious humiliation coloring her cheeks. She moved with a deliberate dignity that seemed out of place in her young frame, handling each coin as if it were precious. "Ms. Harlow," Ryan said, his voice breaking the tension, "I believe we have an appointment." Beverly startled, her eyes widening with recognition. "Mr. Mitchell, yes, of course, I was just handling a situation." She gestured dismissively toward Emma. "I'll have security escort this young lady out, and then we can begin our tour." Ryan stepped closer, his gaze moving between Beverly's pinched expression and Emma's careful composure. "That won't be necessary. What seems to be the issue here?" Before Beverly could answer, Emma spoke up, her voice small but steady. "I wanted to buy that dress." She pointed to the pink creation hanging nearby. "But I don't have enough money yet. I asked if they could hold it for me." Ryan studied the girl more carefully. Her clothes were clean but worn, her shoes scuffed at the toes. Despite her obvious poverty, there was something in her eyes, a determination, a spark of hope that struck him like a physical blow. For a disorienting moment, he saw himself at her age pressing his face against shop windows, dreaming impossible dreams. "And how much do you have?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. Emma's fingers closed protectively around her coins. $2.75, sir." Beverly made a small, disparaging sound, but Ryan silenced her with a look. He moved to the dress display, examining the price tag. $395, he read aloud. "That's quite a gap to bridge." "I know," Emma admitted, "but my dad always said if you want something bad enough, you should try for it, even if it seems impossible." The words resonated in Ryan's chest, echoing advice his own father had given him before drinking had consumed the man's life. He turned back to the girl, curiosity overtaking his usual business detachment. "What's your name?" "Emma Carter, sir." "And why this dress, Emma Carter? There are less expensive dresses at other stores." Emma's eyes drifted to the pink dress, a softness overtaking her features. "Because when I look at it, I can imagine being like the other girls at school, not having to hide during lunch or sit alone. When I wear my old clothes, I'm invisible. But in that dress, I think I'd be seen." The raw honesty in her answer stripped away Ryan's carefully maintained professional veneer. In her words, he heard the echo of his own childhood longing, not just for things, but for dignity, for belonging, for the right to exist in spaces. That seemed determined to exclude him. He made his decision in that moment, though he couldn't have explained the impulse behind it. "Miss Harlow," he said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had built his empire. "Please package this dress for Miss Carter, size—" He glanced at Emma questioningly. "I think I'm a size 8, she said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "A size 8, then," Ryan continued, ignoring Beverly's shocked expression. "And include appropriate shoes and accessories." Beverly's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. "Mr. Mitchell, this dress is from our limited spring collection. We only have 3 in stock and there's a waiting list." "I'm aware of the inventory situation," Ryan interrupted smoothly. "As the owner of this establishment, I believe I have some discretion in its distribution. Please prepare the items." As Beverly reluctantly moved to comply, Ryan turned back to Emma, who stood frozen, her face a mixture of shock and budding joy. "Sir, I don't understand," she whispered. "My money isn't enough." Ryan knelt down to her level, suddenly aware of the absurd disparities at play. His bespoke suit probably cost more than this child's mother made in a month. "Consider it a gift," he said quietly. "No strings attached." Emma clutched her handkerchief of coins tighter. "But my dad says you should always pay for what you want, that nothing worth having comes free." Ryan considered this, respecting the principle even as he recognized the luxury of such idealism. "Your father sounds like a wise man. How about this? I'll accept your $275 as a down payment. The dress is yours to take today, and you can pay the rest when you're able, even if that's years from now." Emma studied his face, looking for deception, finding none. Slowly she extended her hand with the coins. "I accept those terms, sir." The formality of her response nearly made Ryan smile. He took the coins, feeling their meager weight in his palm, insignificant in monetary value, yet somehow heavy with meaning. This small handful represented weeks or months of searching, saving, hoping. For him, the amount was nothing. For her, it was everything. Beverly returned with the dress carefully wrapped in tissue paper and placed in a signature Bellamy's box, along with a smaller box containing satin ballet flats. Her professional smile remained fixed, though her eyes betrayed her confusion at the situation. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Mitchell?" she asked. Ryan shook his head. "This will be all for now. We'll reschedule our meeting for tomorrow." As Beverly retreated, Emma approached the counter where her packages waited. She touched the box reverently, then looked up at Ryan with eyes that swam with barely contained tears. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. Ryan nodded, suddenly uncomfortable with the gratitude. "You should probably get to school," he said, glancing at his watch. "It's nearly 10. Emma's eyes widened. "School, I forgot." She carefully gathered her packages, then paused. "I don't know your name, sir." "Ryan Mitchell." "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I promise I'll pay you back someday." As she turned to leave, Ryan found himself calling after her. "Emma." She looked back, expectant. "Why did you come here today specifically? Why not wait until you had saved more?" Emma considered the question seriously. "Because sometimes you have to take a chance, even when the odds are against you. My mom says that faith means stepping out before you can see the whole path." With those words, she slipped out the door and into the bustling New York morning, leaving Ryan standing alone amid the luxury his money had bought, feeling strangely off balance. The rest of the day passed in a blur for Ryan. He cancelled his remaining appointments, claiming a migraine, and returned to his penthouse. There he found himself standing at his window again, bourbon in hand despite the early hour, replaying the morning's strange encounter. Why had he done it? He wasn't given to impulse purchases, let alone charitable ones. Mitchell Enterprises had a foundation that handled donations, carefully structured for maximum tax benefits and publicity value. Personal charity wasn't part of his carefully constructed life. And yet, there had been something about Emma Carter, something in her determined eyes and dignified poverty, that had breached his defenses. In her he had seen a reflection of his younger self, the boy he had spent decades burying under accomplishments and acquisitions. Ryan set down his untouched drink and moved to his home office. Opening his laptop, he navigated to his personal banking system and created a new account category, simply labeled Emma. Into it, he transferred $392.25, the remainder of the dress's price after Emma's payment. It was a symbolic gesture, visible only to him, but it felt important somehow. A recognition of a debt that had nothing to do with money. His phone buzzed, with Diane's name on the screen. He let it go to voicemail, something he never did. Today, the usual rhythms of his life, the meetings, the decisions, the ceaseless forward momentum of business, felt trivial, even hollow. Instead, he found himself thinking about his own childhood in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the trailer that never quite warmed in winter, the second-hand clothes his mother carefully altered to hide their origins, the constant calculation of what they could afford and what would have to wait. Ryan had escaped that life through sheer determination, scholarships, and an almost pathological drive to succeed. He had remade himself so thoroughly that sometimes even he forgot where he had come from. His past was a closed book, the poverty of his childhood a secret known to almost no one in his current life. But today, a small girl with $275 and an impossible dream had unknowingly turned to that page again. Across town, Emma raced through the school gates, her precious packages clutched to her chest. She had missed the entire morning, but the thought barely troubled her. Her mind was filled instead with the miracle that had just occurred, how she had walked into Bellamy's with a handful of coins and walked out with the dress of her dreams. She stashed the boxes in her backpack before slipping into Ms. Winter's classroom during lunch break. Offering a mumbled excuse about a doctor's appointment, the teacher gave her a searching look but asked no questions, simply handing her the morning's assignments. For the rest of the day, Emma found it nearly impossible to concentrate. Her hand kept drifting to her backpack, touching the edge of the box as if to reassure herself it was real. When the final bell rang, she rushed out before anyone could stop her, eager to get home and show her mother. Sarah wasn't due back from her diner shift for another hour, giving Emma time to prepare. She laid the dress carefully on her bed, smoothing every wrinkle from the delicate fabric. The shoes, soft pink ballet flats with tiny bows, sat beside it. Together, they transformed her small, sparse bedroom into something magical. When she heard her mother's key in the lock, Emma's heart began to race. How would she explain this? Would her mother be angry that she had skipped school? Would she believe the story about the kind stranger? "Emma," Sarah called, setting down her purse. "You home, honey?" "In here, Mom," Emma replied, her voice tight with anticipation. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still wearing her diner uniform, fatigue lining her face. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. The beautiful dress spread on the bed, the new shoes, and Emma's nervous, hopeful expression. "Emma Rose Carter," she said slowly. "What is this? Where did these things come from?" Emma's words tumbled out in a rush as she explained the morning's events to her mother. The trip to Bellamy's, the confrontation with Beverly, and the unexpected intervention of Ryan Mitchell. Sarah listened with an expression that shifted from shock to disbelief to concerned skepticism. "Let me understand this," Sarah said, when Emma finally paused for breath. "You skipped school to go to a store on Fifth Avenue, and a complete stranger bought you a $400 dress." Her voice rose with each word, anxiety sharpening her tone. "Emma, do you have any idea how dangerous that could have been? What were you thinking?" Emma's shoulders slumped. "I was thinking about the dress, about how it might change things at school." Sarah sank onto the bed beside the dress, careful not to touch it, as if it might disappear in a puff of smoke. "Honey, in my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. People don't just give away expensive things for nothing." "He took my money," Emma said, reaching for the thin silver of optimism. "The $275. He said it was a down payment, and I could pay the rest when I'm older." Sarah ran a hand through her hair, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "And this man, what did you say his name was?" "Ryan Mitchell. He owns the store, Mum. Not just that one, but lots of them." Sarah's eyes narrowed with sudden recognition. "Mitchell, as in Mitchell Enterprises?" Emma shrugged, unfamiliar with the name beyond the man she'd met that morning. Sarah stood and went to their small living room, returning with a magazine she'd brought home from the dentist's office months ago. She flipped through it until she found what she was looking for. A glossy spread featuring Ryan Mitchell at a charity gala, the caption identifying him as retail mogul and philanthropist. "Is this him?" she asked, showing Emma the photo. Emma nodded eagerly. "That's him, see, Mum. He's a real person, and he's rich enough to give away dresses." Sarah studied the image more carefully, the perfectly tailored tuxedo, the confident stance, the smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. What would drive a man like this to help her daughter? Charity? A publicity stunt? Something worse? "I'm calling the store tomorrow," she decided, setting down the magazine. "I want to understand exactly what happened." "Mom, no," Emma protested. "You'll embarrass me. And what if they take the dress back?" Sarah's expression softened as she registered her daughter's genuine distress. "Emma, I'm not trying to ruin this for you, but as your mother, I need to make sure everything is on the level. If this Mr. Mitchell is simply being kind, I want to thank him properly. And if there's more to the story..." She let the implication hang in the air. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "It was real, Mom. He was nice. He didn't ask for anything. He just understood." Something in her daughter's certainty gave Sarah pause. Emma had always been an unusually perceptive child, with an ability to read people that sometimes bordered on uncanny. If she sensed no ulterior motive in Ryan Mitchell's generosity, perhaps there truly was none. "Let me sleep on it," Sarah conceded, "but no wearing the dress until we sort this out. Deal?" Emma nodded reluctantly. "Deal." That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found herself drawn back to the dress, which now hung on the outside of their cramped closet door. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, it seemed to glow, the fabric catching and holding the light in a way that spoke of quality and craftsmanship. Her fingers traced the delicate stitching, the perfect seams, the careful details that justified its astronomical price tag. A dress like this would have been beyond her reach even before Tom left, when their family had been intact and financially stable. Now it represented a luxury so far removed from their reality that it seemed almost absurd hanging in their apartment. Yet here it was, a fairy tale materialized in their modest home. And behind it stood a mysterious benefactor whose motives remained unclear. Sarah's protective instincts warred with her desire to see Emma happy. Her daughter had endured so much in the past few years, her father's departure, their financial struggles, the casual cruelty of classmates who judged her by her worn clothes and free lunch status. Would it be so wrong to let her have this one beautiful thing? With a sigh, Sarah returned to bed, her decision still unmade. Across the city, Ryan Mitchell was also awake, nursing his third bourbon as he paced his penthouse. The encounter with Emma Carter had disturbed his carefully ordered existence in ways he couldn't quite articulate. It wasn't just that she had reminded him of his own childhood. It was that she had somehow managed to slip past defenses built over decades. His phone buzzed again, Diane, for the 5th time that day. With a grimace, he finally answered. "This better be important." "Important enough that I've been trying to reach you for hours," Diane replied, her voice clipped with professional concern. "The board wants to know why you cancelled the Bellamy's tour, and Amelia Collins is threatening to take her designs to Neiman's if you don't reschedule immediately." Ryan pinched the bridge of his nose. "Tell the board I had a personal emergency. Reschedule Collins for next week." "A personal emergency," Diane repeated, skepticism evident. "You've never had a personal emergency in the 10 years I've worked." "For you?" "Well, I'm having one now," Ryan snapped, immediately regretting his tone. Diane deserved better. She'd been loyal and efficient since he hired her fresh out of business school. "I'm sorry, Diane. It's been a strange day." A pause. Then, more gently, "Do you want to talk about it?" The question caught him off guard. Their relationship had always been strictly professional, defined by clear boundaries. Yet tonight the prospect of confiding in someone, anyone, held unexpected appeal. "I met someone today," he began, the words awkward on his tongue. "Her child, a girl from East Harlem who came into Bellamy's with $2.75, trying to buy a $395 dress." "What happened?" Diane's voice had lost its professional edge, curiosity replacing efficiency. "I gave her the dress," Ryan admitted. The action, sounding even more bizarre when stated plainly. "I don't know why. Something about her, she reminded me of my childhood, before everything." The silence that followed was heavy with significance. Ryan had never spoken about his background to Diane, had never mentioned the trailer park or the poverty or the alcoholic father, who had sometimes used his fists to communicate. As far as she knew, as far as anyone in his current life knew, Ryan Mitchell had sprung fully formed into the business world, with no past worth mentioning. "Didn't know you had a difficult childhood," Diane finally said, her tone careful. Ryan drained his bourbon. "I don't talk about it. Ever. And yet you're talking about it now." "And yet I am," he agreed, surprised by his own openness. "I think I need to do something more for her." "More than a $400 dress?" Diane asked, practical even in this unusual conversation. Ryan moved to his window, looking out at the city lights. "The dress is nothing. A band-aid on a deeper problem. She lives in a neighborhood where girls like her don't get many chances, where potential is wasted because of circumstance, not ability." "Ryan," Diane said, using his first name for perhaps the first time in their professional relationship, "what exactly are you thinking?" He didn't answer immediately, still formulating the idea that had been growing in his mind since that morning. "I'm thinking it's time Mitchell Enterprises did more than the usual tax-deductible charity galas. I'm thinking about real impact." "You want to help this girl specifically?" "Her and others like her," Ryan clarified, the concept taking clearer shape as he spoke. "An educational foundation maybe, scholarships, mentoring programs, something. That actually changes trajectories." Diane's voice took on a note of cautious optimism. "That's actually not a bad idea. From a business perspective, it could enhance our corporate social responsibility profile significantly. But," She hesitated. Is that the real reason you want to do this? Ryan's gaze drifted to his reflection in the window glass. The successful businessman, the self-made millionaire, the man who had everything and felt nothing. No, he admitted quietly. I want to do it because today, for the first time in years, I remembered who I used to be, and I'm not sure I like who I've become. Instead, the confession hung between them, more intimate than any conversation they'd ever shared. After a moment, Diane cleared her throat. I'll clear your schedule for tomorrow. We can start working on the foundation concept. Thank you, Diane, Ryan said, meaning it more deeply than usual. After they hung up, Ryan remained at the window watching the city below. Somewhere out there, a small girl was perhaps dreaming of the pink dress that had mysteriously become hers. She couldn't know how profoundly their brief encounter had affected him, how it had cracked open a door he had kept locked for decades. The next morning, Sarah Carter called Bellamy's as soon as Emma left for school, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed. After being transferred twice, she found herself speaking to Beverly Harlow. Yes, I'm calling about a transaction yesterday, Sarah explained, keeping her voice steady. My daughter, Emma Carter, was given a dress by Mr. Ryan Mitchell. There was a pause, then Beverly's cool voice replied, Ah, yes, the special circumstance. I want to understand exactly what happened, Sarah continued, and what, if anything, I expected in return. Beverly's tone became even more detached. I'm not privy to Mr. Mitchell's motivations, Miss Carter. He is the owner of our company and can dispose of merchandise as he sees fit. If you have questions about the arrangement, you would need to speak with him directly. Sarah's frustration mounted. And how would I do that? I doubt billionaires take calls from diner waitresses. There was another pause, longer this time. When Beverly spoke again, her voice had softened slightly. For what it's worth, Miss Carter, I've worked at Bellamy's for 15 years, and I've never seen Mr. Mitchell do anything like this before. He seemed moved by your daughter's determination. Before Sarah could respond, Beverly added, I'll have his office contact you. I can't promise he'll call personally, but I'll try. After hanging up, Sarah sat at their small kitchen table, emotions warring within her. Part of her, the fiercely independent part that had kept them afloat after Tom left, wanted to package up the dress and return it immediately. Pride was sometimes all she had left, and accepting charity, even well-intentioned charity, felt like surrendering something essential. Yet another part, the mother who had seen her daughter's face light up at the sight of that dress, whispered that perhaps this was the universe finally throwing them a small kindness. Was it so wrong to accept it? The morning Emma finally wore the pink dress to school dawned clear and crisp, autumn sunlight filtering through the apartment windows in golden shafts. After 3 days of negotiation, Sarah had finally relented, convinced by Beverly's assurance that Ryan Mitchell's gift came with no strings attached. Remember, Sarah cautioned as she adjusted the dress's satin ribbon sash, it's what's inside that matters, not what you wear. Emma nodded dutifully, but her eyes shone with barely contained excitement. I know, Mum, but feeling pretty on the outside helps the inside too sometimes. Sarah smiled, recognizing a wisdom beyond her daughter's years. You're always beautiful. To me, in any clothes. That's because you're my mum, Emma replied pragmatically. You have to think that. The pink ballet flats completed the transformation, making Emma look both older and somehow more vulnerable. A child on the cusp of something new. Sarah swallowed against the sudden tightness in her throat as she helped Emma with her backpack. Careful not to crush the dress. Have a wonderful day, sweetheart. Emma hugged her fiercely, then stepped back, suddenly serious. I'll take care of the dress, Mom, I promise, not even a wrinkle. I know you will, Sarah said softly. Now go, before you're late. As the door closed behind her daughter, Sarah found herself standing alone in the quiet apartment, fighting an unexpected wave of emotion. The dress was just fabric and thread, she reminded herself. It changed nothing fundamental about their circumstances. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted, that some invisible current had altered their course in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Emma walked to school with careful steps, mindful of puddles and dirty sidewalks that might threaten her precious dress. The familiar route felt different today, the neighborhood a little brighter, the possibilities a little broader. She found herself straightening her shoulders, lifting her chin, adjusting her posture to match the quality of what she wore. The first test of the dress's power came as she approached the school gates. A group of girls who normally ignored her stood chatting by the entrance. Emma's steps faltered, old insecurities threatening to overcome her newfound confidence. "Just keep walking," she whispered to herself, channeling her father's advice from years ago. "Head up, eyes forward." As she passed, conversation among the girls paused. Emma felt their gazes on her, assessing, calculating. "Emma?" One of them, Lily Peterson, whose mother was a fashion editor, stepped forward, eyes wide. "Is that a Bellamy's dress? From their spring collection?" Emma nodded, words momentarily failing her. "How did you—" Lily began, then seemed to reconsider her question. "It looks really pretty on you." "Thank you," Emma managed, the simple compliment warming her more than she would have expected. "Do you want to walk in with us?" Lily asked, gesturing to her friends. The invitation was casual, but to Emma it might as well have been engraved. "In gold?" "Sure," she replied with feigned nonchalance, falling into step beside them. Inside, the transformation continued. Teachers who had always seen her nodded with new attention. Classmates who had previously looked through her now met her eyes. Even the cafeteria lady gave her an extra cookie at lunch. It was all so strange. To be visible, to matter, to exist, in the full spectrum of school social life, rather than its shadows. Emma wasn't naive enough to believe it was really about her. She understood that the attention stemmed from the dress, from what it represented, rather than who she was. Yet there was power in being seen, even if the seeing was superficial. The true test came at lunch period. Normally, Emma ate alone at the end of a table, or sometimes with Darius when he wasn't playing basketball. Today, as she entered the cafeteria with her tray, Lily waved her over to the center table, prime real estate in the complex geography of middle school. "Sit with us," Lily offered, patting the bench beside her. Emma hesitated, then slid into the offered space, careful not to wrinkle her dress. Conversation flowed around her, talk of weekend plans, television shows, the upcoming school dance. No one asked her directly about the dress or how she had acquired it, but she felt the unspoken question hovering. "I like your bracelet," Emma said to the girl across from her, finding courage to join the conversation. The girl, Madison, whose father was rumored to be a hedge fund manager, glanced at her, wrist as if surprised to find jewelry there. "Thanks, it's from Paris." "It's beautiful," Emma replied sincerely. "The blue stones match your eyes." Madison studied Emma with new interest. "You know, you should come to my birthday party next Saturday. It's at Chelsea Piers. My dad rented out the whole bowling alley." The invitation was so unexpected that Emma nearly dropped her fork. "Really?" "Sure," Madison shrugged, as if including Emma in her exclusive social circle was the most natural thing in the world. "I'll have my mom call your mom with the details." Across the cafeteria, Darius watched this interaction with a thoughtful expression. When Emma caught his eye, he gave her a small smile and a thumbs up. She smiled back, feeling a pang of something like guilt. Unlike the girls at the center table, Darius had been kind to her when she had nothing, when she was just Emma in her faded clothes, invisible to most of their peers. After school, she sought him out by the basketball courts. "Nice dress," he said as she approached, bouncing a ball casually between his hands. "Looks like it's working out for you." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "You noticed?" Kind of hard not to notice when the queen bees suddenly adopt you into the hive. There was no malice in his tone, just wry observation. "They're not so bad," Emma defended, though part of her recognized the superficiality of her newfound popularity. Darius shrugged. "Never said they were. Just different worlds, that's all." He bounced the ball once, twice. "So, did you get that dress with the quarters I gave you?" Emma hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Not exactly. I went to the store, but the dress cost way more than I thought, almost $400. I was going to leave, but then the owner came in and he just gave it to me for my $2.75. Darius's eyebrows shot up. For real? Some random rich dude just handed over a $400 dress? He wasn't random, Emma corrected. He owns the store. His name is Ryan Mitchell. Still weird, Darius commented, but without judgment. Lucky for you, though. Yeah, Emma agreed softly. Lucky. As they talked, Emma realized that despite the day's social triumphs, her conversation with Darius felt more genuine than any interaction she'd had with her new lunch companions. There was no performance here, no need to impress or belong. Madison invited me to her birthday party, she said, testing how the words felt. Darius grinned. Big step up from eating lunch alone. You want to come too? The offer was impulsive, but sincere. He laughed, spinning the basketball on one finger. Pretty sure I'm not on Madison Fletcher's approved guest list. I could ask her, Emma insisted, suddenly wanting very much for these two parts of her life to reconcile. Darius's expression softened. It's cool, Emma, really. I'm glad things are looking up for you. Just don't forget who your real friends are, okay? The gentle warning stayed with Emma as she walked home, the significance of the day settling around her like the coming evening. The dress had changed things, opened doors, created possibilities, but the true challenge would be navigating this new social landscape without losing herself in the process. At his office in Midtown, Ryan Mitchell sat across from Diane, reviewing the preliminary outline for what they were calling the Bridge Foundation, a non-profit initiative focused on providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children in New York City. The board is cautiously supportive, Diane reported, sliding a folder across his desk. They see the PR value, though some have questions about the scope and funding model. Ryan nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. Have you had any luck locating information on Emma Carter? Diane's expression tightened slightly. Ryan, we've discussed this. Using company resources to investigate a 10-year-old girl and her family crosses several ethical and legal boundaries. I'm not asking for surveillance, Ryan countered, irritation coloring his tone. Just basic information. School, address, family situation. If we're establishing a foundation partially inspired by her, I want to make sure she benefits from it. And what if your sudden interest in her welfare is misinterpreted? Diane challenged. A wealthy single man taking a special interest in a young girl from a low-income family. The optics alone could be disastrous. Ryan's jaw clenched. She was right, of course. Diane was almost always right about such matters. It was why he paid her an exorbitant salary. But the rational acknowledgement did nothing to diminish his irrational desire to know more about Emma Carter, to ensure that his impulsive gift had truly made a difference, that she was okay. Fine, he conceded. We'll focus on the foundation, make it broad enough to include schools in East Harlem. Diane studied him for a moment, then sighed. Her mother called Bellamy's yesterday. Beverly Harlow took the message. Ryan's head snapped up. And nothing. She wanted to understand the situation, apparently. Beverly assured her there were no strings attached to your gift. Ryan absorbed this information, wondering what Emma's mother was like. He had a vague image of someone like his own mother, exhausted from working multiple jobs, proud despite circumstances, doing her best with limited resources. We could start the foundation with a scholarship program, he suggested, returning to the matter at hand. Identify promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds, provide full educational support through college. Diane made a note. That's achievable. We'd need to establish selection criteria, administrative oversight, mentoring components. And a pipeline into internships at Mitchell Enterprises, Ryan added. Real-world experience, networking opportunities. As they continued to work through the details, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine enthusiasm for a project that went beyond profit margins and market share. For the first time since building his company, he was creating something that wasn't just about adding to his own wealth or power. It was, he realized with some surprise, the most alive he had felt in a very long time. That evening, as Emma helped her mother prepare dinner, she recounted the day's events, the compliments on her dress, the invitation to Madison's party, the newfound visibility she had experienced. Sarah listened with a mixture of happiness and concern. "It sounds like quite a day," she said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. "But remember, sweetheart, friendship based on what you wear isn't real friendship." "I know," Emma nodded, setting plates on their small table. "Darius said something similar." "Smart kid, that Darius," Sarah smiled. "How does he feel about all this?" Emma paused, considering. "He's happy for me, I think, but also a little worried." "As a good friend should be," Sarah pointed out. "True friends watch out for each other even when things are going well." They ate dinner together, their conversation drifting to other topics. Sarah's work schedule, Emma's upcoming science project, the neighbor's new baby. It was their normal routine, unchanged by the pink dress hanging in the closet or the social developments at school. In this small kitchen, with the familiar sounds of the building around them, Emma was just herself again, not defined by what she wore or who invited her to sit at their table. Later, as she carefully hung up, the dress smoothing its fabric with reverent fingers, Emma found herself wondering about Ryan Mitchell. Who was he really? What had motivated his unexpected kindness, and why had he seemed so sad despite his obvious wealth and power? "Mom," she called, finding Sarah folding laundry in the living room, "do you think Mr. Mitchell has a family?" Sarah looked up, surprised by the question. "I don't know, honey. Why do you ask?" Emma shrugged, struggling to articulate her thoughts. He seemed lonely, like he had everything but also nothing. Sarah studied her daughter, not for the first time marveling at the old soul that seemed to reside in her young body. "That's a very perceptive observation. I think I'd like to thank him properly," Emma decided, "not just for the dress, but for seeing me when most people don't." Sarah set aside the laundry, considering. "That's a lovely thought. What did you have in mind?" Emma's face lit up with sudden inspiration. "I could write him a letter. A real one on paper, not an email. People don't get enough real letters anymore." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Sarah agreed, touched by her daughter's genuine gratitude. "We can drop it off at Bellamy's tomorrow after school." That night, as the city lights flickered beyond her window, Emma sat at the kitchen table with a piece of stationery, saved from a set she'd received for Christmas years ago, and began to write. The words came slowly at first, then with gathering momentum as she poured her heart onto the page. What she couldn't know was that her simple letter would set in motion events that would change not just her life, but Ryan Mitchell's as well, creating bridges between worlds that had seemed impossibly distant just days before. Ryan Mitchell sat alone in his office, the city lights twinkling beyond his windows as evening settled over Manhattan. On his desk lay a simple white envelope, addressed in the careful handwriting of a child. He had been staring at it for nearly 10 minutes, oddly reluctant to open it. Beverly Harlow had delivered it personally that afternoon, explaining that Emma Carter and her mother had brought it to the store. "The mother seemed nice," Beverly had added, a note of surprise in her voice, and very gracious, not at all what I expected. Now, as the rest of Mitchell Enterprises emptied for the night, Ryan finally reached for the envelope, sliding his finger beneath the flap with uncharacteristic care. Inside was a single sheet of paper decorated with small flowers along the border. The letter itself was brief, written in blue ink with the earnest penmanship of someone who had taken great care with each word. "Dear Mr. Mitchell, thank you for the pink dress. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned. When I wear it, I feel like I matter. People at school see me now. My mom says we should always show gratitude when someone does something kind, so I wanted to write you a real letter. I used to write letters to my dad, but he doesn't write back anymore. I hope you don't mind getting mail from a kid. I've been thinking about why you gave me the dress. My mom was worried at first, but I told her you seem like someone who understands what it's like to want something you can't have. I hope that's not rude to say. I'm taking very good care of the dress. Not even a wrinkle or a spot. I'm saving. My allowance to pay you back someday, even though Mom says it might take a very long time. Thank you again for seeing me. Sincerely, Emma Carter. P.S. You looked kind of sad. I hope you feel better. Ryan read the letter twice, then a third time, something in his chest constricting with each reading. The simple, direct words cut through his carefully constructed defenses, exposing raw nerves he thought long deadened. It wasn't just gratitude Emma was expressing. It was recognition, as if in their brief encounter she had somehow seen through his polished exterior to the wounded boy still hiding beneath. And that postscript, "You looked kind of sad. I hope you feel better." When was the last time anyone had noticed his emotional state, let alone commented on it? He existed in a world of strategic flattery and calculated deference, where people responded to his power and wealth, not to him as a person. Yet this child had perceived his sadness with unsettling accuracy. Ryan leaned back in his chair, the letter still in his hand. He thought about his own childhood, about writing letters to a father who had left for work in another state and never returned, about his mother's increasingly desperate explanations, until finally she had admitted the truth. Daddy wasn't coming back. He had been 8 years old, just a bit younger than Emma seemed to be now. On impulse, Ryan reached for a sheet of his personal stationery and a pen. The gesture felt foreign, antiquated. When was the last time he had handwritten anything longer than a signature? But something about Emma's earnest communication demanded a similar response. "Dear Emma," he paused, uncertain how to continue. What could he possibly say to this child that wouldn't sound condescending or inappropriate? After several false starts, he opted for simple honesty. "Thank you for your letter. It meant more to me than you might imagine. I'm glad the dress has brought you happiness. You're very perceptive. I do understand what it's like to want things that seem out of reach. When I was about your age, I lived in circumstances not so different from yours. That's not something many people know about me. You don't need to pay me back for the dress. Consider it a gift from someone who sees something special in you. Your determination, your dignity, your courage in entering that store with only $2.75. As for looking sad, perhaps I was, though I hadn't realized it was visible. Thank you for your concern. Your letter has made me feel better indeed. Best wishes, Ryan Mitchell." He read over what he had written, aware of how strange it was to be corresponding with a child he barely knew. Was it inappropriate? Crossing boundaries? Yet there was something undeniably healing in the exchange, as if Emma Carter had unknowingly created a small crack in the walls he had built around his past. After a moment's hesitation, Ryan sealed the letter in an envelope, wrote Emma's name on the front and left it on his desk to be delivered tomorrow. Then he gathered his things and prepared to leave, his thoughts still swirling with memories he usually kept firmly locked away. The next morning, as Ryan was reviewing acquisition reports, Diane entered his office with an expression he couldn't quite read. "The Bridge Foundation paperwork is ready for your signature," she announced, placing a folder on his desk. "Once filed, we can begin the process of establishing the board and developing program parameters." "Good," Ryan nodded, reaching for the folder. "I want this to move quickly." Diane hesitated, then added, "I also took the liberty of researching PS 183's scholarship and enrichment programs. They're severely underfunded, particularly in comparison to schools in wealthier districts." Ryan's pen paused above the signature line. PS 183. "Emma Carter's school," Diane clarified, a slight challenge in her tone. "I assumed that would be of interest given your investment in her situation." Ryan signed the document with a flourish, then looked up at his executive assistant with newfound respect. "That was good initiative, Diane. I've worked for you for 10 years, Ryan. I know when something matters to you." She gestured to the envelope addressed to Emma that still sat on his desk. "Just as I know that's not typical business correspondence." Ryan didn't attempt to deny it. "She wrote to thank me for the dress. I'm responding." I could have Bellamy's. Deliver it, Diane suggested, reaching for the envelope. No, Ryan said, surprising himself with the firmness of his refusal. I'll handle it personally. Diane's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. As you wish. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. The foundation is a good idea, Ryan. Perhaps the best one you've had in years. After she left, Ryan sat contemplating the sealed letter. Why did this matter so much to him? Why had one brief encounter with a determined child penetrated defenses? That had repelled far more deliberate attempts to access his emotions. He had no answers, only a growing certainty that Emma Carter had somehow become important to him, not as a charity case or a salve to his conscience, but as a reminder of possibilities he had forgotten existed. Later that afternoon, Sarah Carter was just finishing her shift at Rosie's diner when a sleek black town car pulled up outside. Through the window, she watched as a tall, well-dressed man emerged, scanning the storefront with an air of mild discomfort. With a jolt of recognition, she realized she was looking at Ryan Mitchell. "Jen, can you cover the register?" she called, to a co-worker. "I need 5 minutes." Without waiting for an answer, Sarah untied her apron, smoothed her hair, and stepped outside, heart hammering with unexpected nervousness. "Mr. Mitchell." He turned, surprise evident in his expression. "Mrs. Carter, I was planning to leave this with the hostess." He held up a crisp white envelope. "For Emma." "It's Ms. Carter, actually," Sarah corrected gently, "and I'm just finishing my shift, if you'd like to give it to me directly." Ryan nodded, suddenly seeming less like a powerful businessman and more like an awkward visitor in unfamiliar territory. "Of course." He extended the envelope, which Sarah accepted with a grateful smile. "Emma will be thrilled. Your gift has meant the world to her." "Her letter meant a great deal to me as well," Ryan admitted, his usual polished facade showing small cracks. "She's a remarkable child." "She is," Sarah agreed, pride warming her voice, "though I admit I've been concerned about the attention she's receiving at school because of the dress. Popularity based on appearances is a shaky foundation." Ryan's expression shifted to one of genuine interest. How is she handling it? The question was so unexpectedly thoughtful that Sarah found herself answering honestly. With more wisdom than I had at her age, she sees through the superficiality even as she enjoys the visibility. Her real friend Darius helps keep her grounded. Ryan nodded, absorbing this information with surprising attentiveness. A brief silence fell between them, neither quite sure how to proceed in this unlikely conversation. "Would you like some coffee?" Sarah finally offered, gesturing toward the diner. "It's not fancy, but it's hot and fresh." Ryan glanced at his watch, then back at Sarah's open, genuine expression. For a moment, he seemed to war with himself, duty and schedule against something less defined but more compelling. "I'd like that," he decided, the simple acceptance feeling strangely significant. Inside Rosie's, with its worn vinyl booths and lingering scent of bacon, Ryan Mitchell looked comically out of place in his tailored suit. Several patrons glanced curiously in his direction as Sarah led him to a corner booth and signaled for coffee. "This is quite a different world from Fifth Avenue," Ryan observed, accepting the mug Sarah filled for him. "I imagine most of New York is different from your world," Sarah replied without rancor, "though Emma tells me you might understand more than most people would expect." Ryan's hand stilled on his coffee mug. "She's very perceptive." "Too perceptive sometimes," Sarah agreed with a small smile. "She notices things most adults miss." She studied him openly, curiosity overcoming her usual reserve. "May I ask why you helped her?" The truth, not the polite version. The directness of the question seemed to catch Ryan off guard. He considered his coffee for a long moment before answering. "I grew up poor," he said finally, the admission clearly costing him something. "Trailer park in Pennsylvania. Single mother, clothes from donation bins." He looked up, meeting Sarah's surprised gaze. "I spent my childhood staring through windows at things I couldn't have. When I saw Emma in the store with her handful of coins, I saw myself." Sarah nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. "And now you've built all this life, this success. But part of you is still that boy outside the window. It wasn't a question, but Ryan answered anyway. Yes. The simple acknowledgement hung between them, creating an unexpected bridge of understanding. In that moment, despite the vast differences in their current circumstances, they recognized, in each other, the shared experience of struggling to provide a better life than the one they had known. Emma's father left 3 years ago, Sarah said, offering her own vulnerability in exchange for his. He was supposed to find work in Chicago and send for us. The checks stopped coming after 6 months, the phone calls after a year. I'm sorry, Ryan said, and meant it. Sarah shrugged, a gesture that attempted to minimize pain still clearly present. We manage. Emma's resilient, smart as a whip. She'll have opportunities I never did, if I have anything to say about it. Ryan thought about the Bridge Foundation, about the scholarships and programs they were designing, about the difference such opportunities might have made in his own childhood. I'm establishing an educational foundation, he found himself saying, for promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds, full support through college mentoring internships. Sarah's expression sharpened with interest. That sounds meaningful, more useful than charity galas and tax write-offs. That was my thought exactly, Ryan agreed, surprised by how easy this conversation felt, how free of the usual calculated exchanges that characterized his business interactions. They talked for nearly an hour about education, about single parenthood, about the challenges of raising a child in a city of such extreme contrasts. Ryan found himself more engaged than he had been in any conversation in recent memory, struck by Sarah's intelligence, her pragmatic approach to adversity, her fierce devotion to her daughter. When his phone buzzed with Diane's name, he silenced it without checking the message, an unprecedented act that would have shocked anyone who knew him well. I should let you go, Sarah said, noticing the gesture. I'm sure you have more important matters waiting. Nothing more important, Ryan contradicted, surprising himself with his sincerity. But I have taken up enough of your time. As they stood to leave, Sarah extended her hand. Thank you again. For what you did for Emma. Not just the dress, but the confidence it gave her. Ryan took her hand, struck by its strength despite its delicacy. Thank you for the coffee and the conversation. Outside, his driver waited patiently by the town car. Before getting in, Ryan turned back to Sarah, acting on an impulse he didn't fully understand. I'd like to invite you and Emma to a small gathering next week, the initial board meeting for the Bridge Foundation. Nothing formal, just a discussion of goals and vision. I think Emma's perspective would be valuable. Sarah hesitated, caution warring with curiosity. I'm not sure that's... Just think about it, Ryan interrupted gently. I'll have my assistant send details. No pressure either way. As the town car pulled away from Rosie's diner, Ryan found himself smiling, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his face. For the first time in years, possibly decades, he had engaged in a conversation that wasn't about acquisition or strategy or market position. He had connected with another human being based on shared experience rather than mutual benefit. And somehow, improbably, it had been one of the most satisfying hours he could remember. Back in his office, Ryan found Diane waiting with barely contained impatience. You missed the call with Tokyo, she informed him, disapproval evident. And the review of the quarterly projections. May I ask where you were? Ryan moved to his window, looking out at the city with new eyes. Having coffee at a diner in East Harlem, he answered honestly, with Emma Carter's mother. Diane's surprise was evident in her silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful, measuring each word. Ryan, while I applaud your commitment to this charitable initiative, I'm concerned about the increasingly personal nature of your involvement with this family. Ryan turned to face her, aware that her concern came from loyalty rather than criticism. Noted, but for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm doing something that feels genuinely right, Diane. Not just profitable or strategic, right. Diane studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Alive, she said simply. The word hung in the air between them, unexpectedly powerful in its accuracy. Ryan considered it, turning it over in his mind like a newly discovered truth. "I've invited Sarah and Emma Carter to the Foundation's initial board meeting," he said finally. "Please make the necessary arrangements." Diane's professional mask slipped back into place, though her eyes remained thoughtful. "Of course. Anything else?" Ryan returned to his desk, picking up the acquisition report he had abandoned hours earlier. "Yes, I'd like to establish a special scholarship fund specifically for PS 183, effective immediately." As Diane left to implement his instructions, Ryan found himself thinking about Sarah Carter, her straightforward manner, her quiet dignity, her obvious love for her daughter, and about Emma, with her perceptive eyes and determined spirit. For the first time in many years, Ryan Mitchell felt a sensation he had almost forgotten, the quiet but unmistakable stirring of hope. The evening of the Bridge Foundation's inaugural. Board meeting arrived with a sense of anticipation that surprised Ryan. He had hosted countless corporate events in the private dining room of the Metropolitan Club, yet tonight felt different, weightier, more personally significant than mergers worth billions or partnerships that had made headlines. The guest list is confirmed, Diane reported, tablet in hand as they surveyed the elegantly appointed room. 12 board members, including Dr. Levinson from Columbia's Education Department, and Judge Hernandez plus Sarah and Emma Carter. She hesitated before adding, "Are you sure about including them tonight? It's rather unorthodox." Ryan adjusted, his cufflinks, a nervous gesture he thought he had abandoned decades ago. "I'm sure. This foundation was inspired by Emma. She deserves to see its beginning." Diane studied him with the careful attention of someone who had managed his professional life for years. "You've changed in the past few weeks." "For better or worse?" Ryan asked, genuinely curious about her assessment. "Better," she decided after a moment. "Definitely better." The first guests began to arrive, distinguished educators, philanthropists, and business leaders Ryan had personally selected for their commitment to meaningful change rather than superficial charity. They mingled over cocktails, discussing educational inequality and opportunity gaps with the passionate engagement Ryan had hoped for. When Sarah and Emma Carter were announced, a brief hush fell over the room. They stood in the doorway. Sarah, elegant but clearly uncomfortable in a simple navy dress. Emma radiant in the pink dress from Bellamy's, her hair pulled back with a matching ribbon. Ryan moved immediately to greet them, aware of the curious glances from the other guests. "Thank you for coming," he said, the formal words inadequate for the genuine pleasure he felt at their presence. "We're honored to be included," Sarah replied, her hand resting protectively on Emma's shoulder. Emma looked up at Ryan with wide, serious eyes. "I got your letter," she said. "Thank you for writing back." "Thank you for writing first," Ryan countered with a smile. "It's not often I receive actual, handwritten correspondence anymore." He guided them into the room, making introductions to key board members. Ryan was struck by how naturally Sarah engaged with each person, her intelligence and passion for education evident in every conversation. And Emma, though clearly awed by the opulent surroundings, asked thoughtful questions that impressed even the most seasoned educators present. "That child has an extraordinary mind," Dr. Levinson commented to Ryan after a lengthy discussion with Emma about educational equity. "The kind of natural curiosity and analytical thinking we can't teach." "I know," Ryan agreed, watching as Emma earnestly explained something to Judge Hernandez, her hands moving expressively. "That's why this foundation matters." As dinner was served, Ryan took his place at the head of the table, with Sarah seated to his right and Emma beside her. The symbolism wasn't lost on the other guests, though none commented directly on the special treatment afforded to this mother and daughter from East Harlem. Midway through the meal, Ryan rose to address the gathering, a speech he had prepared and refined over several days, outlining the Foundation's mission, structure, and initial programs. As he spoke about educational inequality and the waste of potential it represented, he found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Emma, who listened with unwavering attention. "The Bridge Foundation will begin with 3 core initiatives," he announced. a comprehensive scholarship program for promising students from low-income neighborhoods, a teacher development fund to attract and retain exceptional educators in underserved schools, and a modernization project to ensure that technology and resources are equitably distributed across all New York City public schools. The board members nodded approvingly, several making notes as Ryan continued. "Our first specific project will be at PS 183 in East Harlem," he said, watching Emma's face light up with recognition. "We'll be establishing a state-of-the-art learning center, providing advanced technology, a comprehensive library, and specialized tutoring services." Sarah's hand found Emma's under the table, squeezing gently as they both absorbed the implications of this announcement. "And to launch our scholarship program," Ryan continued, his voice taking on a softer quality, "I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Emma Carter Scholarship, a full educational trust that will support one exceptional student from PS 183 through college and beyond." A stunned silence followed his words, broken by the sound of gentle applause that quickly spread around the table. Emma sat frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief, while Sarah's expression shifted from shock to something more complex. Gratitude mingled with a hint of wariness. "I haven't discussed this specific aspect with Ms. Carter yet," Ryan admitted to the gathering, acknowledging the breach of protocol. "But the scholarship represents the core of what this foundation stands for, recognizing potential wherever it exists and ensuring it has the opportunity to flourish." As conversations resumed around the table, Ryan found himself the recipient of Sarah's questioning gaze. "That was unexpected," she said quietly. "I should have consulted you first," he conceded. "It was presumptuous." "Yes, it was," she agreed, but without rancor, though undeniably generous. Emma leaned forward, her expression serious, despite the excitement evident in her posture. "Does this mean I can go to college someday? For sure?" Ryan nodded. "It means your education is secured from now through graduate school, if you choose to go that far. Your intelligence and determination will have every chance to develop fully." Emma absorbed this information with remarkable poise for a child her age. "Thank you," she said finally, the simple words carrying the weight of dreams suddenly made possible. The dinner continued, with conversations flowing naturally between discussions of policy and more personal exchanges. Ryan found himself drawn repeatedly into conversation with Sarah, whose practical insights on educational challenges provided perspectives the other experts lacked. "You should consider joining the board officially," he suggested, as dessert was served. "Your experience would be invaluable." Sarah laughed softly. "A waitress among academics and executives, that would raise some eyebrows." "A single mother who understands the real impact of educational inequality," Ryan corrected. "And someone who isn't afraid to speak truth to power." She studied him thoughtfully. "Is that what I've been doing?" "From the moment we met," he confirmed. "It's refreshing." As the evening drew to a close, the board members departed with handshakes and promises of continued collaboration. Soon, only Ryan, Diane, Sarah, and Emma remained in the elegant dining room. "It's past someone's bedtime," Sarah observed, noting Emma's valiantly suppressed yawn. "We should go." "My car can take you home," Ryan offered, gesturing to Diane to make the arrangements. When Emma stepped away to admire a painting on the far wall, Sarah turned to Ryan with renewed seriousness. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why name a scholarship after Emma? Why focus on her school first? Why all of this attention on us specifically?" Ryan considered deflecting with a corporate answer about optics and human interest narratives, but found himself unwilling to diminish the moment with such calculations. "Because Emma reminded me of who I used to be," he said honestly, "and made me question who I've become. Because when she walked into Bellamy's with 275 and the courage to ask for what seemed impossible, she woke something in me I thought was long dead." "And what was that?" Sarah asked, her voice softening. "Hope," Ryan admitted. "The belief that things can change, that the distance between Fifth Avenue and East Harlem isn't insurmountable." Sarah studied him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "You're not what I expected, Ryan Mitchell." "Nor you, Sarah Carter," he returned with a small smile. I think we've both defied each other's assumptions." Their conversation was interrupted by Emma's return, her eyes bright despite her evident fatigue. "Mr. Mitchell, I have a question about the scholarship." "Ask away," he encouraged. "Does it have to be just for me? Could it maybe help Darius too? He's really smart, especially at math and science." The question, so characteristic of the child who had already demonstrated remarkable empathy, touched Ryan deeply. "The Emma Carter Scholarship is specifically for you," he explained gently. "But we'll be establishing others for students, like your friend Darius. In fact, I'd value your input on how we select recipients." Emma nodded, satisfied with this answer. "I think you should look for kids who try really hard, not just the ones who get the best grades. Sometimes trying matters more than being perfect." "That's very wise," Ryan agreed, exchanging a glance with Sarah, who watched her daughter with unmistakable pride. As they prepared to leave, Emma hesitated, then stepped forward and did something. That caught Ryan completely off guard. She hugged him, a quick, impulsive gesture that was over almost before he could register it. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered, echoing the words from her letter. Something tight and long constricted in Ryan's chest seemed to loosen at her words. "Thank you for being worth seeing," he replied softly. After they had gone, Diane found Ryan standing alone by the window, looking out at the city lights. "Successful evening," she observed, joining him at the window. "The board seems fully committed." Ryan nodded absently, his thoughts elsewhere. "Did I ever tell you about my mother, Diane?" The question was so unexpected that Diane merely shook her head, waiting for him to continue. "She worked 3 jobs sometimes, trying to keep us afloat, after my father left. Cleaning houses, waiting tables, whatever she could find." He kept his eyes on the city as he spoke. "She used to save for months to buy me one new shirt for the first day of school each year, just so I wouldn't have to start in something second-hand." Diane remained silent, recognizing the rarity of this personal disclosure. "She died while I was in college," Ryan continued. "Never saw any of this." He gestured vaguely to encompass his success, his wealth, his position. "Never knew that her sacrifices paid off." "I'm sure she would have been proud," Diane offered quietly. Ryan turned from the window, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "What I didn't tell the board tonight, what I haven't told anyone, is that the foundation's full name is the Elizabeth Bridge Foundation." Understanding dawned in Diane's eyes. "Elizabeth was your mother." Ryan nodded. "My mother's dream was to be a teacher. She never got the chance. But now, in a way, she'll help countless children get the opportunities she never had." Diane reached out and briefly touched his arm, a gesture of support she would never have attempted weeks earlier. "It's a beautiful tribute, Ryan." "It's a beginning," he said, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "A bridge between who I was and who I am, between who these children are and who they can become." 3 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Ryan stood on the steps of PS 183, surrounded by students, teachers, and community members. Beside him, Emma Carter held the oversized ceremonial scissors, poised to cut the ribbon stretched across the entrance to the newly renovated Learning Center. "On behalf of the Elizabeth Bridge Foundation," Ryan announced to the gathered crowd, "it is my great pleasure to officially open the Elizabeth Bridge Learning Center at PS 183. Cameras flashed as Emma cut the ribbon, her face alight with pride and purpose. The assembled students cheered, teachers applauded, and parents watched with hopeful expressions, many of them taking time off from hourly jobs to witness this transformation of their children's school. Sarah stood nearby, no longer just an observer, but an official board member of the foundation, her practical wisdom and first-hand experience now formally recognized as valuable assets to the initiative. As the crowd moved inside to tour the new facilities, state-of-the-art, computers, a comprehensive library, dedicated spaces for tutoring and special instruction, Ryan found himself standing alone with Emma on the school steps. "What do you think?" he asked, genuinely curious about her assessment. Emma considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. I think it's going to change things for a lot of kids, not just the stuff, but knowing that someone believes we're worth investing in." Ryan nodded, once again struck by her perceptiveness. "That's exactly what I hoped." Emma looked up at him, her eyes serious. "My mom says you've changed since we first met you, that you smile more now." Ryan chuckled, surprised by the observation. "Your mother is very perceptive, like her daughter. She also says that sometimes people come into our lives for a reason, that you might have given me a dress, but I gave you something too." The simple statement held such profound truth that Ryan felt momentarily speechless. This child, this remarkable, insightful child, had indeed given him something invaluable, a reconnection to his own humanity, a bridge to his past, a purpose beyond accumulation and achievement. "Your mother is absolutely right," he said finally. "You gave me a reminder of who I really am, and for that I can never thank you enough." Emma smiled, the expression transforming her serious face. "You don't have to thank me. That's what friends do. They help each other remember what matters." As they turned to join the others inside, Ryan Mitchell, billionaire, CEO and founder of the Elizabeth Bridge Foundation, felt something he had thought long lost to him, the simple, profound joy of being truly seen, not for what he had built or acquired, but for who he was beneath it all. And in that moment, the distance between the boy from the Pennsylvania trailer park and the man in the bespoke suit vanished entirely, the circle of his life closing in a way he had never imagined.